Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Speak. I'm Talya Pardo. I'm an editor, writing coach, transformational life coach, and TV show host. And today I'm so excited to welcome Cassandra Finch. She is the CEO and founder of the Phoenix Mystery School. She empowers spiritual path and transformative healing through Reiki, BodyTalk, and Soul Realignment, which we're going to talk a lot about today. I'm so excited to have you here with us. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate being on your podcast. So thank you.
I'm happy you did. We've been in each other's circles for a while. We're connected
Yeah.
with it, in the same groups. And I also love that you named your school the Phoenix Mystery School. So that's another connection. I might start with that actually. Tell me why you chose Phoenix as your symbol for your school or your
So
representative.
yeah. So the Phoenix symbol actually came to me when I was about 13, 14 years old.
Mm.
And it was a design that I really, really loved. And I loved the meaning of it around rebirth, around rising from the ashes, around recreating who you are. And that's essentially what I've done many times over in my life. So around the time that the Phoenix actually came to me, I was going through like a really hard time in life. I had like a stalker at the time. There's a lot of like family drama that was happening. And when I turned 19, I actually got that tattoo. It was my first tattoo ever. And
Ah.
when I decided to rebrand for like the fourth time in my business, I just went with that. And I chose mystery school because that's essentially what my business is. We do a lot of
Mm.
things that seem mysterious, but really it's just going back into the ancient ways of healing.
Right. Yeah. There are so many things that we consider the mysteries, but it's knowledge that we've distanced ourselves from or forgotten or even has been denigrated by other movements that came along and separated us from it. And now we're all
Yeah.
rediscovering it. And I love the Phoenix as well. For me, I don't know anyone who gets away from, those kinds of trials through life that change you. It's really about how you approach them and what you learn from them and if you allow it to change you for the better. But myself also, I came to the Phoenix because um there was one like meme I had come across that was something about sitting in the fire of your own discomfort, facing your emotions, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard. We distract ourselves by being busy or escaping or bad habits or um but sitting with it is painful. And I used to liken it to sitting in a bonfire. I'd text my friends and be like, I'm in the fire right now. It hurts, it burns. And that kind of naturally led to rising out of the ashes, reborn, remolding yourself. And you're still you, but somehow this more refined or strengthened, different version of you.
I agree. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's great. And
Amazing.
so from there, tell us what, and tell me a bit more because we had a bit of a brief conversation earlier, and you're on my feed quite a lot. But tell me a little bit more about all the different forms of healing that you do and how do you feel they tie together? That may be a big
Perfect.
question, so you can kind of
No,
tackle it
they
how you
all
want.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Body Talk, that was the first thing that I ever came to. And that was the one modality that actually helps our cells actually recommunicate. So
Mm,
looking at the whole body as a dynamic system. And
okay.
then I decided to become an instructor as well and teach those self-regulating tools. And then I went into Reiki because I felt like it would be a very good complement because not everyone wants Body Talk and not everyone wants Reiki. So I
Right.
decided to add a little bit more and to deepen my knowledge into the energy field, which I thought was really fun to actually look at the chakra systems in a different way and just how energy works in general. And then recently, I did soul realignment. And this is where, to me, this is the modality that was the missing piece where you actually
Mm,
get to the soul level. I know the other ones say that they go soul level. I'm not saying that they don't, but this is highly different for me because you
mm,
can easily find those different patterns and karmic loops and actually find a way to deal with them and give your clients real actionable steps. And for me, that's what I love. I love action. So for
mm.
me, the Reiki and Body Talk can help integrate more of the soul realignment sessions and help them as they move forward. And yeah, so I just find that they're all a complement and they all work together.
Do you think it kind of appeals to the whole body, mind, spirit holistic approach, right? Body
Exactly.
talk is the body, the Reiki is the emotions and the energy, and then takes it to the soul level. And I agree, because I think everything that we do, and how we conduct ourselves in our lives, there's always multi layers to it.
There
There's
is.
the practical, physical world, of you dealing with your frustration on the road or whatever. And then there may be, you know, the other layer of how you got into the car and what you've already been feeling. And then the higher layer of how you navigate yourself through life, that there's so many multiple approaches to everything we're doing in multi layers. And I think it's also a little bit of why our work never seems to end, which is
Absolutely.
great. There's always another way to approach, or a deeper. There are things I've thought I dealt with, 7, 8 years ago, and sometimes they come up again, but I see them in a different
Yeah,
way. Or what the work I've done has given me the tools to then delve even deeper and understand it on another level.
exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that.
So what do you find that clients resonate with the most? Or like, do you start right away with soul alignment? Is there a process that you would approach with a client when they come to you?
I usually talk to the client first and just see what it
Mm.
is that they're looking for. Because when it comes to soul realignment, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but not everyone wants to fully open up into consciousness out the gate,
Yeah,
right? It's something that
it's
you
a
have to
lot.
be really ready for and
Hmm.
really self aware and really self responsible in actually implementing the action steps.
Right.
So some people, when they're first in their journey, it's better to get other healing modalities first because it kind of
Yeah.
opens up their mind. It opens up their world a lot more. It allows them to deal with their past so that they can actually start moving up the layers in their hierarchy of needs and actually start implementing different things. So I find usually people that do soul realignment have already done other healing modalities
Mm.
and they're just ready for that next layer, that next step into the karmic patterns and really starting to end that in their day to day. They really want to live their divinity now. And not
Right.
everyone wants to, and that's okay.
Mhm. Or that, yeah, sometimes they're not ready to approach it. Like the universe brings you the challenges that you're ready for when you're ready. And it's that
Yeah,
like we've just said, it's that cumulative approach to building your inner tools and your inner resources and your understanding. And much as it's so uncomfortable and painful, I think the more you do the inner work, sometimes the more ready you are to face that discomfort or to handle it, because you know what it's all
absolutely.
about. It's not just like, that stab in the heart where you're just down and you have no idea what's going on. It's always going to hurt, I mean, it does hurt and it is hard, but the more you do, there's a little um something in the back of your mind that tells you, okay, but this is going to bring you somewhere. Okay, but there's something to this, or, and that voice tends to get stronger as you're on your journey, so that
Absolutely.
I don't know that the pain goes away, not to discourage anybody, but but
No,
but it does seem to lessen, like it seems less sharp somehow because
exactly.
you've built those tools up for yourself. It's really a beautiful process. And I don't want to be like repeating myself, but I just, in having that ability to see it for myself and experiencing it personally, it just almost makes me more excited to keep moving forward. And maybe you see that with your clients, that they're drawn to, the initiations, and then they want more because they see the results that it's giving them, or they feel that they're evolving and transforming.
Exactly. Like they're able to see themselves in a different light and they're able to understand who they actually are versus what the conditioning told them they were versus
Yeah.
whatever they went through that they felt that they deserved, right? It's
Yeah.
going from things happening to me to what is
Mm.
happening for me, right? And shifting that whole mindset and perspective because that's when opportunities come when you're truly living in alignment with you. But how many people get taught that?
Yeah, it's and we live in such a society of victim mentality where,
Yeah.
it's not fair, or this is happening. There's no sense of, and even responsibility. In the last episode that I did with Janelle Garza, we talked about the difference between responsibility and ownership.
Yeah.
It starts with the concept of responsibility that takes you out of the victim mindset and taking responsibility for your feelings. And it's kind of the way we try to teach our kids too, right? It's like, too bad if they took your truck away. you're responsible for how you reacted to that happening,
Yeah,
right? And then we need to step into, I own my reaction, and they're responsible for having done what they did. But when you take ownership of it, of yourself, that's, I feel like, the opening to embodying what you're meant to do, and who you truly are, right? Like
I
the
absolutely agree.
responsibility is almost the middle step towards
It's
step
the
forward.
balancing factor,
Mhm.
right? Between peace and
Mhm.
continued suffering.
Yeah. Yes,
So
absolutely. And it's so, there was a video I just posted recently. It was a very short clip from the movie Evan Almighty, which is one of my favorite movies with oh my God, of course, Steve Carell and Morgan Freeman. And it was just this moment where it's towards the end, and his wife is like, has left him because he's turning into Noah and he's building the ark and everything, right? And she's like, but like, he's abandoning us, or he's just not seeing us and getting the picture. And Morgan Freeman says to him, but when you pray for strength, does God give you strength, or does he give you the opportunity to be strong? Right. And
mhm.
when you pray for patience, does he just give you patience, or does he give you the opportunity to be patient? And that is, I think, what you were talking about too, right? It's seeing the opportunity that the universe gives you to bring those strengths out in yourself, and to take ownership of that for yourself, because the universe doesn't just drop things in our lap,
It
right?
does not.
It really is the work. But it is about taking it on for yourself, and that's how we step into it.
Absolutely. We still need to take action. And
Yeah.
that's always the missing piece between everything, right?
Yeah.
Anytime that I've read books like The Secret, like they're really good,
hmm
but it still doesn't talk about the full action piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so much more to our lives than just the allowance of what's happening.
Yeah.
We have the opportunity to change our karmic patterns based on what we choose and what mind frame that we actually act from.
Right.
So our thoughts don't create our reality until we act on them. So I'm being very conscious of what that is.
Yeah, and I find that that's almost the missing piece between, I love the spiritual community and the spiritual world, and it's really changed my life in a lot of ways, but there's some of those flash phrases that are not going deeper, or doing a disservice to some people, right?
I
And end
agree.
up disillusioning them, because it's like, well, I'm supposed to think that, I've made, $10,000 this month, and how come it's not happening? Because that next step of action isn't being implemented. Like, the universe wants to
Exactly.
see you've got skin in the game. It's not just
And
here to,
skills.
yeah, skills that we have to develop. Like, they also don't just come out of nowhere. It's that, the earthly realm having to actually do like, and go
Yeah,
through it all to achieve that spiritual side of things, right? To get there, we still have to go through the motions of it,
exactly.
genuinely, you know.
Absolutely. Because opportunities can't come unless we have the action
Yeah.
step, which is usually gaining the skills that we need to actually bring in the income that we're actually looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And even then, if you don't even know what the actions are, like, you need to know the background. You kind of have to flip back to the beginning, um, to understand what actions will be in alignment or appropriate for the changes you want to make, right? And not
Exactly.
just kind of willy-nilly changing. It's I'm doing a lot of references today. It's the George Costanza, do the Costanza, right? And he does the opposite of everything that he used to do, and everything all of a sudden worked out for him. It's not that,
Yeah,
like, random shift.
it's
they
not.
they are things that really do need to be in alignment.
Yeah. So, for example, I wanted to do public speaking. So instead of just
Mm,
getting on stage, I actually took the courses necessary to build my confidence and to also change, in a way, like my identity to who I
mm,
am. Because the same mindset that got me where I am is not going to get me where I'm going to go. So I
yeah.
know those for me were actions that I needed to take in order to actually fulfill that. And it's interesting because when you do things like that, things will just, the opportunities will show up when they're meant to as well.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even focusing on finding any of those types of events, even though I had the training. But then
Right.
I met with someone, they saw my vision board and was like, hey, let's work together.
That absolutely is how it happens, right? And that's why I feel so much energetic heighten the word I'm for an editor and a librarian, I have a very hard time with vocabulary. Sometimes I'm like, I can't get that word. There's this heightened energetic flow that happens when you just turn your direction just a little bit, and when you
Yeah,
connect with other people and put things out without like an avarice, without like, I'm going to tell this person so that maybe they'll help
exactly.
me.
Yeah,
It's
no,
no, I'm just connecting with you, and this is me just telling you what's interesting to me or where I'm looking to go, without any expectation for the exchange being there.
exactly. Absolutely. And it's just such an interesting place to be in because
Mm-hmm.
that's what a lot of people miss is
Yeah.
actually having community, having people
Yeah.
that can help you. Like having that referral type basis is so important. Everyone with their business thinks they just have to do it alone and get successful alone instead of having a team. And that doesn't mean you have to hire a marketer and hire this and hire that. But even the more that you go out just showing up in your heart space and just connecting with people genuinely, you
Yeah.
start to make connections.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been my experience in the last year and a half that I've started my own, my own business. And it's a beautiful feeling because it shifts you out of like, it doesn't have to be competition. I'm happy to support you, right? Because we were creating a connection, and I'm happy to be excited for someone else for whatever they're doing. And that's how you build
Exactly.
those authentic connections. And it will come around back to you, because then they're going to be also happy to know you and happy to support you. And
Exactly.
in this world, it's such a funny dichotomy because we're so physically isolated, especially the last few years, and yet I've met more amazing people in the last 2 years online, than
Same.
and my social world and my business world and all of that has gone online. But it's so fulfilling, and it feels it's so, it lights me right up, because you make those connections on a genuine connection basis. Like, I'm connecting with you for who you are, and I'm not being put in those physical spaces where sometimes some of our defenses come up a little bit more easily,
Yeah,
or insecurities. Right here, we can just connect and share and be happy, and there's no reason to have any slight or resentment for other people's what they're doing.
absolutely not. Because everyone has their own unique talents and gifts. And if
Yeah,
we can actually just honor who they are and then honor who we are, we can actually start looking at each other like, how can we help each other
yeah,
versus the competition? And
yeah.
it's not looking for someone to help you in that sense, right? In that weird negative sense. It's more of, I understand what this person does and I have people that would be perfect for them, right? And then
Right.
they can
And
do the same for you.
absolutely. And it's something I think that, and maybe it's just the space I'm in, that is really heavily dominated by women. But I think it is coming out of more women stepping into the entrepreneurial space, more women um, learning to support each other. A lot of people are evolving, so they're becoming the kind of people who are happy to connect and support, right? And kind of letting go of those negative holdbacks. Um, but also that the feminine naturally wants to connect, right? That's what we're seeking, and that's a
Exactly.
space I've been recently delving into also, as the honoring the feminine and masculine, and learning that that's what we do. We create community, we create a special kind of community that nurtures and supports. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it comes out of that space. That's part of where I came up with the Wisdom Well group that I've started, which is
Mm.
is just women need to connect on all levels with each other, and we move through so many different stages in our lives, as mothers, as wives, as single women, as we move into physically, our bodies change, like as we age. Yes, everybody's bodies change, I know that, but what I mean is that for women it changes in so many dramatic ways that we have to learn to deal with, and it often comes with those emotional connections too, right? Our children grow, we see them in different stages, that we have to re-identify who we are, right? Like, and accept that and grow with it. So I think we always need to have those sister connections. They're so essential.
I agree. And I've noticed over the last 10 years, they've changed dramatically.
Mm.
because
Yeah.
especially in the collective consciousness, karmic pattern wise, just going through the different lifetimes, it wasn't
Mm,
safe to be fully feminine and a healer and be seen and be spiritually powerful. All those things weren't actually available for basically
right.
the existence of Earth until now. We are the most safe we've ever been. And of course, that
Right.
doesn't mean that there aren't places on this earth that aren't safe. I'm not saying everyone is safe, but
Yeah,
it's
no,
getting
that's not
to that point
right.
of where there's more positive choice available. And I think that's so important that we continue building that community, that sisterhood, that knowledge to be seen as well, because that's what's going to help change the other areas that are still fighting for that sense of freedom.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's so many places in the world that women are not safe, body, mind, or spirit, right? There's
No,
just nothing safe about their lives. I think that there had there's something inside me that says there was a time when we were able to really fully be in our, female expression and energy and power. And somehow, somewhere along the way, it got something bad happened, something
yeah,
just
a
went
long time
wrong.
ago.
But
Yeah,
I really have truly come to believe, and I feel very strongly that with our remembering and our rediscovery of ourselves, we have to remember not to turn on the masculine and demonize the masculine, because
exactly.
it's only going to just flip the coin instead
Yeah,
of change the coin entirely, right? Like
yeah.
we're not going to be any better if we do that.
No, it
Um
becomes a power struggle.
yeah.
And that's never healthy on either end of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
we've spoken about that a lot because I've seen so many go into the opposite of automatically demonizing the masculine, that all men are a certain way, or, whatever
Yes.
the
So true.
belief system is, when
Yeah.
we just need to honor their experience
Yeah.
as well as ours, and find that common ground and still support each other instead of being separate.
100%. I mean, men and the masculine, they have their own traumas and they go
They
through their
do.
own trials in life that are very hard, that we really don't get to understand, right?
Yeah,
And the way that they communicate it, or the way they don't communicate it, right? Like it's understanding what is going on for them and how they need to process and how they need to be. And it doesn't mean that we erase ourselves. It just
yeah,
means that we can hold space for us and for them. And it's such an important conversation. I think that really needs to be promoted more.
I
That's
agree.
become something that has become very, important to me. But so tell me, when you're working with soul alignment clients, or even
Mhm.
in any of the levels of work that you're doing, how you're seeing that manifest from your clients in terms of, um, I guess, embodying the feminine, if they're women clients, and coming into balance with masculine, or yeah, balance, I guess.
Yeah. So for them, it's just recognizing the different patterns and things that they have bought into, whether it's
Mm,
present lifetime or past lifetime, because even things in the past lives can show up here. And you
sure.
can see those patterns very clearly when you know what the energetic frequency is. So we
Okay.
pinpoint the energetic frequency. And I've also created a workbook for them as well so that they can actually write all this stuff down. And then
Amazing.
they can start going through all different parts of their life and say, hey, where am I still buying into chaos?
Mm,
Where am I still participating in suffering? And it's not that they've created it, but when you're used to a certain way of being for so long, it almost becomes second nature to dismiss that experience in a way and just
mm,
have it continue and cycle on.
yeah.
For me, it was the whole gossip drama cycle.
Mm,
Even if I wasn't engaging, I would allow people in my circle to continuously
yeah.
do it without me taking a step back. So it's getting very clear on what those patterns are and how it actually goes against what your soul energy center is.
Mm,
Because usually, when you're participating in these different patterns, you aren't following your soul.
right.
There's a block, there's a restriction, there's something you're going to come up against frequently, and things won't manifest easily. So, what I've noticed when they started to actually embody this and start to be like, okay, I'm now going to look for where I feel in pain,
Mm,
and I'm going to look at that energy. I'm going to look at that pattern and see what the next action would be to take me out of that.
right.
And
That's
then they start noticing their whole
mm,
life change. And sometimes you might notice a crumbling with certain
mm,
people or situations, and that is normal. when you've been in the same cycle for so long and you decide to step out of it.
Yeah.
But mostly they're finding that the opportunities that they were wanting for a long time are now finally starting to come to them. They're starting
Yeah.
to understand their life so much more. They're starting to understand who they are, and they know how to take action from that place because they now know what their gifts actually are, what they're actually here to do.
It's disconnecting from, you know, even if you want to talk like outside of the spiritual industry, you know, or world, into psychologically and
Yeah,
physiologically, our brains are wired to, and the ego is programmed to stay with what is familiar, even
yeah,
if it's not beneficial, right? It can be entirely damaging to you by, you know, staying in narcissistic or toxic, excuse me, relationships or bad habits, right? But it's what we know. And so that's what we think is safe.
yeah.
And it's hard to take that step out, right? Like I
It's really
resonate with you
hard.
on the gossip drama cycle because you know, kind of grew up in that space too, right? That's,
Same.
and it seems to be a very feminine it's like it's one of the toxic traits of femininity, right? It's the,
It is.
because it's all based on communication and talking. But when you, where was I? Oh, I lost myself. Is when you remove yourself from it, it's scary. That's what I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
because it's unknown. Even if
Exactly.
you can think that it's going to help you and change your life, you don't really know how, and you don't even know the feeling of it, right? So, like, even the
Yeah.
feeling of not gossiping, or the feeling of stepping out of a toxic relationship or interaction, what what do you mean? I'm not tense, you know, I'm not generating that adrenaline, and it's calm, you know, stepping out of chaos. Like it's a scary feeling. And so
It
people
is.
tend to, you know, you really need to have the courage and the determination to make those changes,
And the tools to regulate your
and the
nervous
tools.
system,
Yeah.
because it becomes boring when you don't have that emotional roller coaster happening all the time. Well, you equate stability and peace with boring, right?
Yes.
Because there's no
Yes.
highs and lows.
That's
So
right.
again, having the tools, which is why the other modalities are important beforehand, or having that certain level of awareness
Yeah.
so that you don't identify again with the suffering or the chaos or the drama. And you can actually look at what are my actual agreements?
Yeah.
And based on knowing who I am, what is the best next step?
Yeah.
And that's not easy. I think one of the times my biggest learning lesson so far on this earth was when I had that stalker for over 10 years.
Wow. Oh, I
And
had no idea. Wow.
oh, yeah. And it was like a constant day to day thing of where he was threatening to kill me. He tried to
Oh
assault
my
me,
God.
kidnap me. Like it was a whole ongoing thing from 14 to like 26.
Wow. Oh
But
my God.
the interesting thing was though, there I wasn't even far into my personal development at all. I think I had just started, so I only knew
Yeah,
some of the
that's very
basics.
young. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in my early 20s, when I started learning about this stuff. And I just remember one day when he came in, normally he would beeline it to me and he would just start harassing me and doing whatever it is that he would do. And I remember just standing there and being like, I am tired of, running to the back and being a coward. I'm tired of calling the police. I'm tired of reporting him. And I had already gotten criminal convictions. I'd already gotten
Wow.
restraining orders. Like it just was never ending. So in that moment, I just stood there and was like, I'm done being your victim. And at that point, I didn't care if he actually harmed me or if
Wow.
something really bad happens. I'm like, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to stay in my power. And I don't care what happens beyond this. And I just kept telling myself that you do not have permission to touch me, to talk to me, nothing. You cannot come near me. His face went white and he ran out of the store, and I haven't seen him since.
Wow.
So I'm just gonna put a disclaimer, like when you're
Yeah.
in an unsafe situation, I'm not saying do what I did,
Right.
but for
Of
me,
course.
it was
Yeah.
it was a definite learning situation for sure, because he could have had a weapon. He said he did. He
Mm.
would tell me all the time he was gonna blow my brains out. Like
Wow.
it was a constant thing. So being able to actually stand in that energy and actually feel that surge of power coming into my heart, and just knowing what
Mm.
I'm no longer accepting, it was like instant. It
Yeah.
was crazy. And I'm not saying it's going to be instant for everyone, but sometimes it takes a few times of standing in that power.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was a huge learning lesson of how to no longer play the part, because it
Yeah.
kept happening in my mind. From what I know about me now, it kept happening because I kept playing into what he wanted me to be. So
Yeah.
he had the power and I had none.
Yeah.
So all it took was just bringing it back.
It was all around for him. What was just the thrill he got from scaring the crap out of you, right?
He
Like
got life force
that's
energy from it,
yeah, yeah.
you
And
know?
some people do feed on that. They feed on the
They
gossip,
do.
they feed on the drama, they feed on the violence, they feed on the intimidation, and the threat. And so yeah, you cut off his supply, right?
Exactly.
That
And
was it.
absolutely. And it's true with anyone. It might not have to be that extreme.
God,
Obviously, it's an extreme
that's
situation.
I can't imagine. That must have left you with like PTSD. I mean, that's
Oh,
traumatic to live
massively.
through. Yeah,
Yeah. That's why I
wow.
got into body talk, actually. That's why I
Right.
did emotional releasing techniques through body talk. Because it's not just body stuff, they go through the mental, emotional, all the energetics of the body and different energy systems. But that's what got me into it, because even though that threat was over, it wasn't in my mind. I was having flashbacks. I was reliving the
Yeah,
whole situation for years.
I can
And even though I
imagine.
took back my power, I still had the
Right.
emotional effects.
Well, you were
So
incredibly strong to take that stand. And I think a lot of people do come to that point where it's just we're done. I'm
it
done.
gets
And
sick
it's
and
almost like
tired.
you've taken so much from me. It doesn't almost matter anymore. You know,
Yeah,
what happens to me,
do what you will.
I'm just not participating in this anymore. Yeah. But I understand what you mean as well, because just from my own experiences, I know that the triggers for me from the past, and I'm so grateful to be in a wonderful relationship now, but I know that there are times where I can I can now say I'm really feeling this trigger. It's a full body experience. I know what
Yes.
my body's feeling, but I also understand that this is not that situation at all. And so I just need time to decompress my body from the reaction because my mind now understands. Whereas before, maybe a few years ago, I would have completely reacted and it would have been full body and mind reaction to the trigger, right? But now I've progressed to the point where I can recognize, like, oh, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and I feel it in my body. So I work to relax my body and understand that this is nowhere near what I'm reliving, what my body's reliving, right? The reaction
Yeah,
the experience my body's reliving. And so there's most
absolutely.
definitely a mind body connection. It's the body really does hold our entire tale, our stories
It
within.
does,
Yeah, yeah.
especially through the connective tissue. If we don't deal with the emotions as they're happening, we just file them in the body for later. And
Yeah.
that's what ends up causing a lot of physical issues down the road. It creates a lot of physical weakness. And over time, we start injuring ourselves or hurting ourselves or having other things pop up, like different symptoms.
Right.
And it's all based on what's going on in the limbic system, what associations
Yeah.
we've made to pain, to whatever we've experienced, and then how the limbic system is telling our body to respond to that. Because if something has the same sort of flavor,
Yeah.
the brain can't tell the difference between past, present, and future. You
No.
can even just be thinking of the past and all those same emotions come up. You could be thinking of something
Hmm.
that's never happened and have
Yep.
the same reaction, right?
Yep.
Because it's all in the limbic system and then in the connective tissue. Because I find for me, I'm not saying it's true for you or other people, but when I've had full body reactions, it's because I know that those emotions are still existing in my tissues.
Mm,
I haven't
yeah.
fully integrated all of them yet. And that takes a lot of time. I don't know if it's ever a process that will be 100%. Healing is a lifelong journey,
Yeah.
but we can start to understand and regulate ourselves and our body and our mind so that it doesn't have that full blown effect. But it does take time of implementing.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I know that, the impact will lessen and the time that it takes to recover yourself,
Yeah.
gets shorter and shorter. Like you can catch it faster and kind of move through it more quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't know that those touch points ever fully go away, right? Like,
Yeah.
God, hopefully we can all get to a point where we can go, oh, look at that. That was a trigger. Okay. But
Right.
right. But that takes so much work and so much self-awareness. Um, and it really takes commitment to being honest with yourself too, right?
Yeah.
About, I know that, so a lot of my issues around my hormones being unbalanced and stress management. I mean, I lived a very, very high stress life for ever. And that's having its impact on me today. And coming back and to learn about myself, I've realized that I took myself into negative scenarios. So I used to, even as a teenager, I remember doing this, create a scenario that would be very upsetting or devastating to me, like imagining somebody dying or a terrible thing happening, right? Losing my home or whatever. And I would go through the process and I used to tell myself, oh, well, that's just so that I'm prepared, right, for how to deal with it. But actually, I was just damaging myself because I was stimulating cortisol and adrenaline in my
Yeah.
system, right? I could feel my heart race, I would feel the rush through my body, and then I'm just further hurting myself. But because my brain was wired so much for that, that became like a fix, right? Like not being used to being calm and like boring, right? Where like,
Yeah.
things are stable, the stability, my brain would seek out that that chaos. And so if I don't have it in my world around me, well, I'm either picking a fight with somebody to create the chaos, and if not, then I'm doing it in my head so that
Yep.
I can get that physical rush, the chemicals through my body. And so they're
Exactly.
really it's such an interconnected process, right? Because then I would even
It
imagine
is.
the next step is also to go understand why my soul seeks that chaos and like where that lies further, into
Yeah.
my own soul journey.
Yeah. If it's like negative unjust karma that we've taken on because we feel like we deserve to suffer or we deserve the
Mhm.
chaos or we deserve the pain,
Yeah,
those things are so common of
yeah,
where we've made a negative choice that went against our soul in the past life and we hurt someone else. So we feel like we need to continuously hurt ourselves as time goes on so we don't repeat the same patterns. And even if it's not past life, people do this in this lifetime all the time too. I can so relate to what you're talking about because I used to do that all the time. And every so often, I still do it because I'm still working through my relationship
mm,
stuff because I've gone through a lot of traumatic relationship experiences.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
something that can be just so small can just, just set me off. And again, you have to take the time to be like, this was a situation then.
yeah.
I'm triggered because it reminds me of that, not because it's the same.
That's right.
And just take the time and then also look at, any past patterns.
Yeah,
But it's really interesting just to see how the soul and the journey, our own personal soul journey, has impacted, what's going on today. And what I love about it is that you don't need to come to me for soul realignment to change your own patterns and your own timelines and your own karma. You can do that just by making different choices. And that's what I
yes,
love about healing as well, because it all just expedites the process, but it's not something
right.
that you can't do for yourself too.
Oh, well, because ultimately it comes down to you, right? You
Yeah.
need to be willing to have the awareness, willing to look at what's going on, or even if to keep it on a surface level of just looking at what habits or choices you're doing that are not bringing you positive results, right? Like
Yeah.
that you don't need to go so deep. You can, but you can still change your life just by, rationally examining your choices and
Yeah.
asking
Where
like
do I put
what
my energy?
exactly. What am I doing today that brought me good? And does picking the fight with my husband, like bring me
Yeah.
any good? Well, no. What are the alternatives? So or whatever the choices that we make are. But
Exactly.
it's that awareness, that starts it all.
Absolutely. And we do have to have a certain level. But then once we've
Yeah.
reached a certain threshold of self awareness, we can't just do the normal, mundane, day to day stuff. Like we
Yeah.
actually have to implement everything, not be that
That's right.
weekend spiritual warrior, but actually just start implementing at the physical level. Because I feel like even still, there's
Mm,
such a disconnection from our spiritual and our soul into the physical embodiment. Like
yes.
there's still a lot of escapism teachings out there, which is like, oh, now we have to ascend and do this and escape this reality.
Yeah.
When for me, that reality is just embodying that here. And when
That's
you
right.
change your inner world, what happens outside of you changes. Like the
Oh,
earth hasn't
absolutely.
changed, but how I view it has.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't have all these negative people taking my energy anymore because I just stopped giving it to them. And I started surrounding myself with supportive, loving, caring people.
Yeah. And that changes everything for you, right? And it's
It
so nice
does.
to talk to you, Cassandra, because I'm listening to you and I'm imagining um how your clients must feel when you work with them, because there's such a there's such a supportive energy when you're talking about things. There's no judgment around,
No,
and there's also an acceptance of the different layers that people might be willing or unwilling to go to. So, you
exactly.
just support them in the space that they're ready to be in and facilitate
Absolutely.
as much as you can.
Exactly. There's absolutely no pushing on my end. But of course, when we get to a certain level in the healing journey, I do give them more responsibility to implement certain tools that are coming up to help them,
Right.
right?
Right.
Instead of being like, oh, yeah, just book another session. No, do these tools,
Yeah.
start being consistent, and then we can re examine from there.
Yeah.
I love working with my
Practicality.
clients. Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, it's not all up to me. It's also personal level and choice at a certain point. But when I work with them, I've had them talk to me about pretty much anything and everything that's ever happened in their life because they have felt safe to
Yeah.
fully open up. And I know there's times where, like, well, I don't know if you would be judgmental, but of course they find out that I don't care what their choices were. I don't
Right.
care what they've done because that's a part of their journey. And if it's something that they wish to heal from, great, let's tackle it together. Right.
Right.
And I
Yep.
know there's probably not a lot of supportive places like that, but that's what I've worked on so hard over the years is to learn how to cultivate that sense of safety for my clients so that they can have the transformations that they're really seeking without feeling like they need to hold back and they can go where they're ready to.
Right. Because if you feel like you're holding back, then it's a disservice to you, to both of you,
Yeah,
right? If the client feels like they can't share it all, because healing really does, it encompasses everything about you, right? And
exactly.
we all go through everything. Like we all
Exactly.
go through things that we're not proud of. We all change so
Yeah,
much throughout our lives, like into different people practically. I mean, as we evolve. And so without facing the reality of who we are and where we've been, we can't really effectuate the healing that really the authentic healing.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
even with like the pushing dynamic of healing doesn't work either.
No.
You just have to create that space, and if they're willing to receive it, that's totally up to them.
Yeah. And it really brings us back to what we said at the beginning about responsibility and ownership. Like that's
Exactly.
also, you can have awareness, but if you don't take responsibility, there's all of these components that move you forward in terms of action. So this is
Absolutely.
amazing. I can talk to you for talk to you for the rest of the day.
You
I
just
can't
keep
believe
going.
we're coming close. Yeah, I can just keep going. This is wonderful, and I feel such a wonderful connection with you, like a great relatability and resonance. That I think we're coming from similar places. So
Yeah, I
it's
love it.
really great to connect with you. So, but I'm going to bring us to the closing of the show, because
Yeah.
we've been talking for for a good amount of time now. And I'd like to say thank you and ask you if maybe, soon in the future we can do another episode, or, have another
Anytime.
conversation. That would be
Yes,
great.
please.
Thank you. So,
Thank
as I
you.
ask all of my guests, I'm creating a Soul Speak speakers or guest list book recommendation list. I always mix up the title of, the order of those words, but essentially, I ask my guests to recommend a book that has impacted them and that they feel would be important to share and hopefully have resonance with some of our audience.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I'm really excited for this because one of my favorite all-time books, I actually read it about a year ago, and
Mm.
it took me a long time to get through.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna lie. But it's called the Sophia Code by Kaia. So when
Okay.
we talk about feminine healing, it takes you through a
Mm.
whole process. There's
Oh.
so many codes in there from each ascended feminine master throughout
Okay.
that whole book.
Oh, wow.
And every time I did one of those chapters with one of the ascended masters, it took me a couple months to really like integrate
Mm.
what they were talking about. And it would always bring me to such a place of peace and understanding about myself and healing in such a deep way. Every single line that came up, I was really emotional over, but it really
Wow.
helped me step back into my feminine. So I feel like it's really important for the remembrance of our ancient
Mm.
feminine wisdom ways and just how we used to be, like how you were talking about,
Mm.
just bringing that knowledge back. And I feel like this is like that portal to that.
Ooh, then I definitely have to get it. And it will be on the book list, which will be listed in the show notes. So if you can just tell us how we can reach you, how we can find it, and all of the links and access points are going to be also listed in the show notes for the show. So
Good. Yes, you can
yeah.
just find me at phoenixmysteryschool.ca. It's my website. I also on Instagram, same handle, it's Phoenix Mystery School, and TikTok. I love doing that as well. Yeah.
All right. Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
So I hope that everybody enjoyed this. I know I enjoyed myself, and please reach out
I
to
loved it.
Cassandra me if you want to get in touch with Cassandra for all of the incredible work that she does. Thank you so much for being here today. Hope
Thank
we'll
you,
speak again
Talya.
soon. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right,
you so much.
wonderful. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.